So, hello, Dee. Welcome to Disabled and Proud. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
It's
I'm
been
really glad we've managed to make this work because we've come together and then not, and then it's just been a hit and a miss. So I'm really glad we're getting the time to do this today. So the
yeah,
first question that I ask every single guest is, how do you refer to your disability?
God. Well, first and foremost, it's rare. So
Yeah.
it's normally when people hear it, they kind of like, what's that?
Yeah.
Because we didn't know
Uh-huh.
when I was diagnosed either. So how I describe it, it's called Friedreich's ataxia,
Uh-huh.
but we call it FA for short.
Mhm.
And how I describe it, gosh, it's like MS.
Uh-huh.
I always think of it as MS, but in a way where it does everything MS does, but
Yeah.
obviously slower, and there's a different reasoning behind it. And yeah, it's mobility and coordination
Yeah.
that it affects.
Yeah. And for you, were you born with this, or I mean, I don't suppose this is something that you acquire. I suppose that you like genetically you're born with this, and then over time it like kind of
Yeah.
shows its symptoms and signs as you progress and as you like get older in your years.
Yeah.
How did that manifest for you?
Um, well, I was always a really active kid. I did
Yeah.
obviously gymnastics, cheerleading, dancing, and then I noticed something was wrong around about 16.
Uh-huh.
I know something was not right. And it took, I think I didn't really fully comprehend something was wrong until I was 18.
Uh-huh.
And then obviously we went through the process of getting diagnosed and pushing it, which wasn't easy at all.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's genetic. So I've got it when you're born, but it
Uh-huh.
takes obviously normally it shows when you're a kid, but
Yeah.
it didn't show until late for me. So
And for you, the process of diagnosis, what was that like? Because from speaking to other people who have got, rare or some form of genetic disability, it's almost like doctors don't believe you until you kind of have to scream in their faces.
yeah.
And with it being rare, I was wondering, was that the same situation for you? And and how did that journey happen, if you don't mind talking about it?
Yeah. Well, like you just said, that was literally the run. It took
Yeah.
2 years to get diagnosed properly.
Wow.
I went to like a physio first, and they
Uh-huh.
obviously told me nothing was wrong. So then they put me to a neurologist, and the neurologist basically very bluntly told me it's probably psychosomatic.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, basically denied everything I was telling him. And
Yeah.
so it's all in your head. Like quite literally told me it was all in my head. And I was like, no, no, it's not. And then yeah,
Like I sit here open mouthed, like I'm in shock.
yeah.
But the amount of times that I've heard this story is it's shocking because
These are people that are meant to, help. And it
yeah,
felt in that case that they were interested
yeah,
at all in hearing you out. And it took my GP, God bless her, to kind of say, you're specialist and you're denying someone
yeah,
is telling you what's what. Listen to what, I'm not doing this. And she was the one that was like, enough.
yeah.
So it was her, but yeah.
It's it's honestly like it's shocking because I think especially as you said, like you were what, 16, 17, 18. Those years are really formative in your life. And to suddenly turn around and have a psychologist be like, yeah, it's all psychosomatic, must have played like some like an unknown amount of stress and toil like on your own mental health. Because if someone professional is telling you what you're saying isn't existing,
It's wrong. Yeah.
yeah. And
It
I
makes you feel
just,
crazy. It
yeah,
makes you feel crazy. It makes you feel like everything you're going through, is it real?
yeah,
Or am I just making it up?
yeah. And that's such a horrible place to be in, because like you said, the doctors are meant to be the ones who are helping you, and if they're not,
Where do
like,
you go from there?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for those years, like I said, they are quite like they're formative for everyone. And I've literally said this about 100 times, like you could never pay me enough to be a teenager again. Like I just don't need to go through that again. Like it was funny and fun whilst it lasted, but I don't need to go
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
repeat it. But for you having like, this rare genetic condition kind of bubble up under the surface, what was that like for you at that period of time in your life?
Luckily, when my diagnosis came about, I just finished college, so I
Yeah.
was 18. But it started impacting things that normal teens wouldn't think twice about, like going
Yeah.
out drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a worry.
Yeah.
And just doing things that teens would do, like they wouldn't plan things, they'd just go and do it. And obviously
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. And something was wrong, and it came to the head of me saying, right, I can't behave like a teenager. I
Yeah.
can't do what a teen does because my body and brain doesn't work like theirs anymore.
Yeah.
So it was sad, but in a way, a blessing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful way of thinking about it, and something that a great mentor of mine always says is that in every stressing there's a blessing, but you kind of
Yeah.
have to really look for the blessing sometimes.
Sometimes it's harder than most. Kind of look
Yeah.
for it. You're like, well, where's the good? It'll be
Yeah.
a while.
And how has, you know, having your disability, how has that affected like your career path and what you chose to do and what you went on to do?
Well, I always wanted to be an actress or a writer, or I
Yeah.
always wanted to do that. But then obviously I was diagnosed around about that time where you're deciding where you
Yeah.
want to be. So it's not always, it wasn't great because it took a big hit of me to say, well, I can't do that. And then it took a year and a half for me to say, oh, I can,
Yeah.
but obviously differently than others. So I always was doing acting and writing, but now it's more towards advocacy and kind of
Uh,
integrating disability into it. And then modeling came about as a complete accident that I just kind of fell into, and it just worked. But
yeah.
yeah, I think I've always known I wanted to do the arts, but with the disabilities, it's made it revolve around advocacy
Yeah.
instead of kind of not selfish reasons, but reasons of what aren't as important. Whereas now it's like I've got an incentive.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about particularly disability advocacy and the people who are disability advocates is that quite often you're drawing from your own personal experience. So the experience that you have probably with a lot of medical gaslighting, like you're really able to talk about that firsthand, and a lot of people will appreciate that. And I think,
Hopefully, I mean it's you still get gaslit, when you're
yeah,
telling your own story on social media. You still get people denying it and denying what's happened to you. But I think that is also at the same time that's where the uneducation comes in.
yeah,
So it's a bit of a catch-22 for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's like bang on, is that people online, keyboard warriors, all of them.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And for you, with your diagnosis, and then kind of like falling into like modeling, and I'm not going to say that you fell into writing, because if you always knew that you wanted to do that, that'd be something that you had in your mind.
Yeah.
Through like any hardship, have you been able to like find a positive attribute about yourself, and almost use your writing to like channel that, and appreciate yourself, and look at back and see what you've done?
Yeah. So obviously I set up my Instagram, I think 2-3 years ago. It was a
Yeah.
while ago. And for me, the images were great, but I wanted to
Mhm.
put something with it that
Yeah.
I could look back on and other people could look back on and go, oh, I relate. So I started writing poetry, and I think it allowed me to go deeper into my own psyche and my own problems and things that I may
Yeah.
have not been aware of or addressed any other way. Um, but it's not just for me to go back, it's kind of for other people to look at it and go, oh wow, it's a journey, but at the same time I relate to everything she's saying. And it may not just be disabled people.
Yeah.
It, it's every single person has got issues that we ignore. I think this has allowed my disabilities allowed myself to listen to my body and listen to my head, because it's important.
Yeah, definitely. And you said earlier that your disability is it's like mobility. So like you have, issues with your mobility, and do you use mobility aids, and what does that look like for you?
Well, I use a wheelchair,
Uh-huh.
but I can use my legs on days when I'm a bit more confident. I have like
Yeah.
a walker,
Yeah.
but walking it's dependent. There is no one shoe fits all,
Yeah, of course.
as we're aware. But yeah, I was so scared about using them.
Yeah.
There is a stigma around walking aids and just aids in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found they really give you independence and help.
And what was it like for you going from like not using mobility aids to then using mobility aids? What was that experience like for you?
Scary.
Yeah.
It obviously when you're that age,
Yeah.
you're having things taken away from you you never knew existed. Like walking and things is second nature.
Yeah.
So to have that become an issue is was very scary, and I think we put what the people think before our own brain.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely judged myself harder than anyone else. But then it got to a point where I just didn't care. But it is scary. It comes with a lot of stigma and a
Mhm.
lot of stereotypes that aren't true. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely scary, but something that I you have to combat.
Yeah, and I think what you said that it allows you to be independent. A lot
Yeah,
of people seem to forget that actually mobility aids are nothing to be pitied, because they provide so much independence for
yeah,
people.
I agree. The problem is it's I don't know why, but they're advertised towards like the elderly,
Yeah.
and that is not the case at all. Um, so I think you think by doing that you're broken,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and you're not in any way, shape, or form. Everyone's different. Every single human being on this planet is a unique individual, and this is one thing that makes you you. And it's nothing to do with being old or broken. It's just who you are. It's your way of life.
Yeah, and I love that as well, because I think a lot of disabled people can think that they're broken,
Oh yeah.
and it's not like that at all. And that's what I think one of the main reasons that I probably created this podcast is because I hate the thought of someone with a disability thinking that they're worth less than or broken, when
Yeah.
like you're not. Like, your disability is perfect for you. It might not be perfect for someone else. Like, I'm sure if me and you swap disabilities for a day, we'd both be like, what the actual fuck is
Well,
happening?
yeah. We'd have no idea what is going on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
so perfect for you, you know?
that's the same for every single person. Even
Yeah.
able-bodied are not the same as the next person. And I think it's not disability itself that gives it a bad name. It's
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
It's the way people treat disability that gives it that kind of stigma. It's sad, but at the same time, you gotta rise above it.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? Is that we all know ableism exists.
Mm,
You know, we all know it's there, and we do have to push forward, but it's also making other people aware that ableism exists, because I think a lot of like non-disabled people are not aware of
definitely.
how ableist society actually
Yeah.
is. And you know, you think about, like, my prime example is always think about a building and think about how you get into that building. Now, if there's a step, how does someone who uses a wheelchair get in? How does
Exactly.
someone who has mobility issues or sensory issues or sight issues, hearing impairments, how do they get in that building? Because we all take it for granted that we can see the step, or we know instinctively that it's there, or we
Yeah.
know instinctively to like lift up our foot and walk in the door.
The people don't have that luxury.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
crazy. And I think until you have a disability, you are completely blind to how ableist society is.
Yeah.
And then you get a disability and you're like, hold on a minute. The world's really biased.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so biased. And the thing is, we laugh about it, and I have these comments, and we laugh, and it's because if I think about it too much, I
You'll
might cry.
cry.
Yeah.
So you've got to laugh, because at the end of the day, this is the way the world is.
Yeah.
And we either can get angry about it, or we can laugh and try and change it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's something that we have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I always ask every guest, and I kind of asked you earlier, but I think I'm going to ask you how I ask everyone, is that, have you noticed within yourself a positive attribute arising in yourself from disability? So, for
Definitely.
example, I always say that I'm really tenacious, and I'm not necessarily sure without my disability if I would be as tenacious.
Yeah.
I say that I probably would be, because I'm a bit of a dick sometimes. Like, if I want something, I'm going to go after it.
Same. I'm 100% the same. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
But I think with disability, it's become more, because I refuse to let other people dictate how I will live. And I guess that's stubbornness coming
Yeah.
in, and just me being, I refuse point blank. But yeah, I think it allows you to listen to yourself
Mm-hmm.
a bit more, but also advocate for yourself in a way
Yeah.
that you never would before. So there's a lot of positives, and I'm not the same person who I was at 18 at all.
Yeah.
And that's positive for me, because I don't think I'd be the person I am today if it wasn't for that.
Yeah. And I think that's a really lovely way of looking at it as well, is that actually you wouldn't be the same person that you were at 18, but that's not a bad thing.
No,
I think a
definitely.
lot of people, you know, if people change or they evolve and they grow, they can, sometimes it can be seen as a bad thing, you know, oh, I'm not the
Yeah.
same as I was like 5 years ago and I can't do the same things that I could do. But actually, if you flip that on its head, look at all the things that you can do,
Yeah.
or like look at all the things that you've impacted. I like to think about, you know, who have I spoken to and what conversations have I had? Like even a randomer on the bus, you know, like
Yep,
you never know what kind of conversation you've had with them that will change their life.
completely. It definitely puts you in a different light to yourself and to others.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just one. It sounds awful. But people have always said I've been strong, but I said
Yeah.
to him, well, when you've got no choice, what can you do?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly that. Like, what can you do? It's either sink or swim.
exactly.
And
You either are strong or you like destroy you, and that's a choice that nobody wants. So you're not. Are you strong or do you just have no choice?
yeah, exactly.
That's what it was.
I'm wondering for you, because you had to go through quite a lot to get your diagnosis, and by the sounds of things, it sounds like you were passed from pillar to post.
Mm.
Can you roughly imagine how many doctors that you've seen about getting a diagnosis?
Jeez. I'm going through my head. I'm like, what? I want to say like 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to ask that because I think if people feel like they might have a disability,
Push.
yeah,
You've got to push. You've got to advocate for yourself. Um, it's scary because you've got these professionals telling you nothing's wrong, and you don't have a degree. You don't have that medical degree, but you have your body. And
yeah,
you know your own body and mind, and you know something is not right, and you have to be that person that advocates for yourself.
yeah, for absolute sure. I think that you've got to keep pushing for your answer, and if it's not the answer that you want, you've got to keep going until it
Yeah,
till it is and it makes sense for you.
100%.
So I like to ask I like to ask people, do they have a set of weird questions or like funny questions that people, like random people, ask them? So I'll preface this. I recently was out for dinner and someone asked me if they could cut up my food for me. And I was like so taken aback at the time. I was like, No,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
good, thank you." But it isn't the first time it's happened, and I very much doubt it's going to be the last time it happens.
last, yeah.
So do
Uh,
you have a particular set of questions that people ask you where you're a bit like, "Oh, I've heard this before," or "Actually, that's quite funny," or I don't know,
yeah,
anything like that?
you get the so I'll get, but you're in a wheelchair, but you can move your legs. You're not disabled. What is going on? Do you know when you look at somebody, you're like, you have a brain.
Yeah.
Can you use it? Oh my god. But
Yeah.
you get the questions. I think I've been given the all because obviously I'm on social media. You get the inappropriate can you have sex?
Yeah.
So you're like, can you? Like,
Yeah.
can you have sex? Why would you ask someone that? It's crazy.
I think it's so interesting that you are not the first person to say that as an answer for this question. And I highly, highly doubt you're going to be the last.
No.
And it seems to be something about disability and sex that really intrigues people. Because I think because our bodies don't necessarily look the same, do the same shit that everybody else would do, it's
Yeah.
almost like the first thing that they want to ask.
Yeah, it's also, I think for them as well, it's hard to imagine anybody would find a disabled person attractive or beautiful. So
Yeah.
even especially an able-bodied person. So for them, it's like, really? It's crazy.
Like so taken aback, like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, oh my goodness, someone wants you. You get that a lot, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
But again, that's someone's ableism
Yeah.
showing that education.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it's down to, isn't it? Like that's ableism at its finest.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and that is, can you say that you're disabled and proud?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I wouldn't a few years ago. I was
Yeah.
very ashamed. But I think it's a journey that everyone has to go through.
Yeah.
Is that and it's awful, but that feeling of like not feeling good enough and not feeling like an equal to anyone else.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a journey you've got to face yourself. But yes, now I would say I'm disabled and proud, and I wouldn't change that for the world.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's a journey that everyone's got to go through and face on their own terms.
And I think you're so right when you say it's a journey, because I know a lot of people who have, been on that journey, and it can be very, very lonely and it can be very isolating.
Yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah. And like, you almost need to reach out and find your community of people to help you along the way,
Yeah,
particularly with, we've said before that, disability is seen as this bad thing and this like awful thing, and like heaven forbid anybody ever becomes disabled. But actually,
yeah,
there's so much fight and so much grit and determination in disability that actually it's such a disservice to not be disabled and proud. But
I agree.
understanding that it's a journey to go on
Yeah.
is something in itself.
Well, I lost a friend I knew
Yeah.
with like 8 years, a really close friend, best friend, because of her ableism.
Oh, really? I'm
Yeah,
sorry that happened to you.
and I just, first of all, I couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
but then I think when you look back, you're like, well, I actually can.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's a common thing I think with a lot of disabled people, is realizing the people around them are ableist,
Yeah.
and you can't educate. Sometimes you have to just walk away to protect yourself, and that's exactly what I had to do.
Yeah. I think that's so true, isn't it? That people around you, you start to realize how ableist people are.
Yeah,
And actually, like you said, sometimes walking away is the best thing, because you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
exactly. I think as much as I explained to her my predicament or what I could and couldn't do, she didn't care. She only saw how it impacted her and what it would affect her in her life, and she didn't understand how I could use my legs, but I couldn't not be in a wheelchair. I could use my legs, so she couldn't understand, or she just didn't care
Yeah.
how it impacted me. She cared about how it impacted her life, and it came to the point where I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I don't deserve to feel less than, especially by someone who's known me for that long,
Yeah.
who just tried to dictate how I should live, where she's not been in my shoes. She wouldn't know how I am. And that is a lot of disabled people. You do have to walk away from others if they don't, meet your education, or if you can't sit and have a conversation with them, you've got to walk away.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's true. It's very true, because at the end of the day, you're the only person that can see your world through your
Yeah.
eyes. And if the people that you're explaining that to are unwilling to accept it.
And meet your, standards, or
Yeah.
just meet when you tell them your specifications for adapting and
Yeah.
they don't accept it, that's you're not going to get over that, because that is the first hurdle.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone to deny your condition or who you are, that's denying a part of you, a big part of you.
Yeah.
So that in a way is a friend saying, I don't really like what I'm seeing anymore.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but unfortunately you've got to find the right people.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, you've got to find your people who accept you for exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And exactly how you are as well. Because I think with disabled people, it's not just who you are, it's how you are, how you move through this world. Because Lord knows it's different for all of us.
Oh yeah. And I think that is hard for a lot of people to accept. Like the whole, some people are in wheelchairs, some people use canes or walkers or nothing. It's completely invisible. And some people don't understand that it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of ableism comes in. It's like, we don't look disabled. Well, you don't look stupid, but here we are. You know?
I think, yeah. And like everything you're saying, just it reiterates every fact that we've made today, is that actually you find your own people, but also don't be afraid to stand up for yourself when it doesn't feel like you are being treated fairly, because you're worth absolutely everything. Like, we are all worth our own weight in gold. That was such a mouthful to say.
We got there in the end.
I know we did get there in the end. I really had to think about the words I was using.
No, it's crazy. I think for people where it's so shocking for them when you're like, no, I'm beautiful and I'm smart and I'm sexy and I'm worth a good person, or I'm worth more than what you expect. It's shocking for them to go, really? So you wouldn't change it? It's like, no, I wouldn't. And then when people find out that you're confident and you love yourself, it's hard for them to kind of compute.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so hard for some people to compute that actually you can be disabled and you can love yourself. Like, shock horror, like they can coexist.
It's crazy. Or, you say, I am beautiful and I'm worth a good person loving me. I know what I deserve. And they go, really?
Oh gosh,
crazy. So, but again, that's ableism, but it's not always their fault. It maybe society's fault on that one.
Yeah, society has a lot to answer to in terms of ableism and how people think about disability.
Definitely.
And it's going to take a lot of deconstruction. It's not something that can be fixed overnight, because these are ingrained thoughts that have been there forever.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of people coming forward and just refusing to accept this baseline that we're given, and it's going to take probably decades.
But you know what? There's so much fight and pride in that fight for disability that actually I'm very happy to be like a soldier in the army for it.
I agree. I'm the same, because I don't think I've ever met a disabled person that's not, first of all, very open-minded and accepting everyone, because I think obviously they've been on the other side of that. But I've never met a disabled person that's not strong or that's not willing to fight or speak out. And I think I don't understand why this stereotype of disabled people are very shy and quiet and, very meek and mild, because every single disabled person I've met is the complete opposite of that.
I'm very much inclined to agree with you. Every single person that I know who has a disability tends to be a real loudmouth.
Yeah. And
I
don't understand where the whole trope came from.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because in the media, disability is portrayed as like meek and mild and shy in the corner. And actually, when I think about absolutely everybody that I've even spoken to on this podcast, everybody is like, no, I'm maybe it's taken me a while, like you said, to be disabled and proud, but actually I'm so proud to be here. Or yes, I am immediately disabled and proud, and it's given me so much in my life. And you know, I'm actually very much with you. I don't think I know someone who is disabled and who isn't willing to fight, because we've had to fight for what we deserve already in our life.
It's not more
What's another argument about it
Yeah.
between friends? Like,
Yeah. And I think this whole, you know, trope, I've never met a disabled person that isn't confident. I've never met a disabled person that isn't strong or independent. So I don't know where this comes from, because I've never, so far in the community, I've never met someone that is, you know, what they portray disability as.
yeah.
I've never met someone like that. So I don't know where it came from, but I think a lot of like stereotyping and toxic ableism came from that.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with you. Absolutely 100% agree with you.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Honestly, though, I have loved this chat. I think it's been a really insightful conversation. And I'm so glad that we got to have this, because I think it's been really wonderful. And like, thank you so much for giving up your time to being on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed it.
But again, thank you for having me. It's a real honor when you get, you know, told that your voice matters, or that people want to talk to you. It means you're getting somewhere in this fight. And I think it's one step at a time with us. It's not all at once.
Yeah. And I think what you say is so right. It is one step at a time. And that step might not even be a step. It might be like a wheel, or it might be like a step forward in a walker, or in a crutch, or a crawl. Like, someone that I used to really admire always used to say, and I know that it's not him that said it, but he said, if you can't walk, run. If you can't run, fly. But then also going backwards, if you can't walk, crawl. And if you can't crawl, just move your foot an inch forward.
No matter how big the step, it's still a step.
Yeah.
Go forward. But I think as well, what you've just said is, I say that is obviously I can't walk.
Yeah.
And what is funny is I'm doing London Fashion Week in February.
Yeah.
I'm not walking down the runway. I'm rolling down the runway, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Speak soon.
Hey.